All right. Hello. Great good evening to everyone. It's a rainy evening in the Gambia, and thank God we're happy that it's raining. Salutal, how are you doing? How's everyone? I think it's time that we Gambians, we begin to have a conversation. And the conversation should not always be political. We have a lot of things to talk about that impacts our daily lives. One is the issue of foreign exchange, foreign currency management, and government policy vis-a-vis foreign exchange. So when and how and who should start this conversation? I think this conversation should be spearheaded by the general public. This conversation should be spearheaded by vested parties. This conversation should be spearheaded by each and every Gambian, because each and every Gambian is affected. We are affected for the simple reason that our economy is an import-driven economy. An import-driven economy relies heavily on outside purchasing to sustain what happens internally in the country. Therefore, we need significant amounts of foreign exchange to make sure that our import bills are met. We have seen what has happened in the Gambia over the past 3 to 4 months, where government, by way of central bank, through a directive, of course, or forced banks to stop giving out foreign currency bank account holders their currency in dollars or in hard currency, instead in dollars at a rate prescribed by them. Well, it's not only unfair, but it has an adverse disadvantage to the economy, and ultimately it's the Gambian consumer who's going to suffer. So before I get into this conversation, I want to make one thing clear so that we can understand the dynamics of our foreign exchange situation. Gambia happens to run, there are 2 types of foreign currency management. One is called a fixed rate, and the other one is called a flexible rate. A fixed rate is a currency that is fixed based on a standard, based on another currency, or whatever. A flexible exchange rate is an exchange rate that fluctuates and varies based on market demand, based on economic performance, and also external factors of other economies. Well, since Gambia is an open liberal economy, the Gambia decided to use what I call a flexible foreign exchange regime. A flexible foreign exchange regime calls for certain things. The central bank to monitor and manage foreign currency. That's one. Secondly, regulate. And the regulation of foreign currency is to allow operators, i.e. banks, i.e. bureau de change, to run foreign currency operations in the country. Well, that being said, if banking supervision is weak, if oversight function is weak, there will be tendency for speculation. And when speculation hits in and takes a toll on the economy, it's going to be tough to make sure that the optimal use of foreign currency is managed. The optimal use of foreign currency is to the best advantage of the Gambian. When I say optimal use, foreign currency devoid of speculative activity. And as of now, the speculative activity on foreign currency is quite heavy. Traditionally, in the Gambia, foreign currency, well, when I say traditionally, I'm going back about 30 years ago, 35 years ago, or even 40 years ago. Foreign currency was managed by banks. Travelers tend to ask for travelers' checks through banks. And trade financing has been done traditionally through letters of credit. So basically the banks were the conduit where inflows and outflows of foreign currency, happens. That's where the financial intermediation happened. But over the past 15 years to 20 years, we've had the beginning of what you call MTOs. That's money transfer operators. And these were the Western Unions. These were the BABAs. These were the RIAs of the world. And now the APSs and others. So this has changed the dynamics. And in changing the dynamics, what has happened? We have created a secondary layer. What is the secondary layer? A business that is there to mop inflows, dollars, pounds, euros from the diaspora, from anyone who owes payments outside to bring it into the country. Now, when these people bring foreign exchange, they don't have need or use for the foreign exchange, i.e. to settle bills or any other thing. So what do they do with this foreign exchange? They tend to use the foreign exchange as a commodity. What is the commodity? Money that they can sell. So when they're selling money, they get a spread. When they get a spread, they add on the effective rate of the currency. And that becomes the secondary layer. So now there's another layer that is what you call the traditional parallel market. The traditional parallel market is what Gambians call the black market. The black market is the market that handles transactions. The black market is the market that determines and dictates the rates in the country. The rates are, this currencies happen because this transaction happens because most of the time average individual will just come, buy currency or sell currency at the market on real-time basis. So now I have given you basically the three layers of the Forex market. You have the parallel market, which is the black market. You have the MTOs, which is the money transfer operators, and you have the banks. But of all these threes, the ones that are very significant and important to the economy for them to have access and inflow of foreign currency are the banks. The banks are nothing but mere merchant houses. What is a merchant house? People who facilitate international trade finance. They facilitate international trade finance by opening LCs for the average trader. The LCs that they open gives one comfort to the trader that is dealing externally to supply goods to the Gambian trader. It also assures the local trader that come time of the maturity of the instrument, they would have had foreign currency to settle their international obligation on behalf of their client. Well, now the banks are at a drought. What is a drought? The banks are still in the business of international trade finance, but the banks are not in receipt of foreign currency. And that is the problem. That is why the Gambian economy is suffering price hikes. That is why the Gambian economy is in an abysmal state. Who is responsible? The sole responsibility lies with the central bank because it's part of monetary operations and monetary functions, like it or not. Foreign currency is a central bank function. So now, when the central bank came with a directive to all the banks, I applaud the move as an immediate measure to stop the bleeding, to make sure that our local currency, the dalasi, will not go untamed. But that decision should not have lasted more than 14 days because it's not a policy decision. It's a reactionary decision to stop the bleeding of the currency at that particular time. It's been 3 to 4 months, going 5, since the directive was given, and nothing tangible or concrete has been put in place to date. And the economy is not on vacation. The economy is a living organism, and the economy will punish the consumer. will punish the businessman and everyone will suffer. So what needs to happen is the central bank need to come up with a concrete policy action to deal with this festering problem if they want to have a prudent economic management of the economy, particularly trade financing, which relies heavily on foreign currency. What are the problems that we are faced with today? The middleman, which I consider to call the money transfer operators, are the people who bring in remittances to the Gambia and sell these inflows to people. Well, under the prevailing circumstances as it is right now, these money transfer operators are still in business, but the government of the Gambia and the economy of the Gambia is cut out completely. What do I mean by we're cut out? The transactions are happening offshore, meaning these MTOs are collecting monies outside of the Gambia, be it England, be it US, be it Angola. And guess what? Those dollars are not coming into the Gambian economy. They are now settling bills on behalf of people who are engaged in trade financing, meaning Nyanjai is someone who brings tires to the Gambia. I happen to have a supplier in Malaysia. I'm owing him $300,000. Now I will talk to an MTO who happens to have dollars sitting outside of Gambia. He will do a settlement on my behalf offshore. Then now I will give him my raw dollars that I've collected through the transactions that I've been engaged in. That's not good for the economy. And right now, that's one thing we are doing. And secondly, the current foreign exchange mix, it's creating a dollarization of the Gambian economy. Dollarization of the Gambian economy, meaning no one is indexing their transactions in dollars anymore. Everyone wants to index their transactions in dollars because that's a way to manage their risk. If you index your transaction in dollars, you tend to have what you call a difference in exchange and you lose value. So if the central bank is not careful, this economy, come October, November, is going to be in a big mess. Why are we going to be in a big mess? Look at the current dynamics as it is. October is the boom period for Gambia because we expect a lot from tourism. Now, we've heard what's happening with the Nordic group. A lot of tourists are not going to come to the Gambia. That will affect our inflows. So then the only thing we're going to rely on as inflow to the country is what we sell with our cash crops, particularly groundnuts. We don't know yet how the outcome of these rainy seasons are going to be vis-a-vis the crops. Yes, we've had a lot of rains, but we knew that we had some issues with farmers getting fertilizer and other things, and ultimately that will affect yield. When yield is affected, our expected inflows as hard-earned currency will be reduced, and it will be impacted further because we can safely say that 55% of our tourism receipts will not reach the shores of Gambia come October through March of next year. Why? Because a big partner has been lost. So what can we do as a nation? We need mitigation strategies. And these mitigation strategies are cross-cutting and multi-sectoral. When it comes to trade financing, the key port of call is the Central Bank of the Gambia. And the Central Bank of the Gambia need to find sustainable strategies to make sure that we continue to be in trade internationally, we continue to have a stable currency, and we continue to protect the Gambian consumer from incessant price hikes that we're suffering. The price hikes we're suffering are not all internationally driven. Internationally driven in the sense that it's not all about global commodity prices, but it's about endogenous factors that are controlled by Gambians. Our foreign exchange market. And as it is right now, the Gambian foreign exchange market is out of control. And it has poor supervision. I'm sorry to say, the Central Bank of the Gambia. The Gambian foreign exchange market is at the mercy of the big players who are in the market, be it the MTOs or be it big time traders who happen to have inflows most of the time and want to sell it at a speculative rate. And a lot of people think intervention is what's going to solve the problem. Intervention meaning the central bank using our reserves to sell currency to people who are in need. That is an inefficient use of our resources, because whenever we intervene, most of the time the resources are bought by people who happen to have no bills to cover but are looking to sell to someone else who has a bill to cover. What does that do? It adds a layer in the transaction, and adding a layer in the transaction happens to add another problem in terms of rate hikes. It doesn't make sense. A thriving economy, January 2022, the dollar be it $51.25. August 2022, the dollar at $59. It doesn't make sense. And also, the way things are happening based on the central bank directive, everyone is losing money. Today, the trader has a $1 million letter of credit to settle. The bank doesn't have money. He is at liberty to buy dollars outside. How is he going to buy dollars? He will mop wherever, whenever he can find a dollar. What does that do? It means he can buy dollars at $59. That's the effective street, or whatever you want to call it, the black market rate. So when you buy these dollars at $59, what's going to happen? You now take your raw dollars to the bank, and your bank will now calculate the dollars you brought to them at $54. They're not taking dollar for dollar. They're taking a dollar at a rate. So you bring in $1 million, you are left with less than $1 million once they're in receipt of your dollars, and all other costs that they're going to, and charges that they're going to put on it. So there is inefficient use, an inefficient mode of transaction that ultimately is the Gambian consumer that is suffering. And that's why it's translating on a daily basis to price hikes in the market. It's translating to high cost of living. It's translating to social dissatisfaction. And these are things that our policymakers should be mindful of. And I've been saying one thing, and I will continue to say it. President Barrow's biggest problem is not his political nemesis anymore, or nemesises. President Barrow's biggest problem is the social and socio-economic dilemma of the Gambian. If the president is wise, economic management will be at the forefront of his quest to manage this country. People talk about security, people talk about other things, but security and others, or stability and others, are consequential effects of good governance and stable macroeconomic environment. And as it is today, the macroeconomic environment of the Gambia is highly unstable and volatile. The macroeconomic environment of the Gambia is highly unpredictable. You cannot predict it. And economic visibility comes with predictability. And today, there is no economic visibility vis-a-vis our local economy. So we need to wake up. We need to have a conversation. And this conversation must start by Gambians trying to understand that the only way going forward for this economy is to make sure we change how things are done and how we do things. If not, we will be in a big trouble. And this trouble is what's going to make our country to get into a predicament that none of us will want, none of us will like. So I'm urging all that we start a conversation. I'm urging all that it's not wrong to engage the government. I'm urging all that it's not wrong for Gambians to have a civil conversation. And unfortunately, that's another problem. we lack what it takes to have a civil conversation. Civil conversation, conversation devoid of personal attacks and others. And this is one thing that we need a conversation on, because October is fast coming, it's just around the corner, and any sensible economist will tell you that all is not well with the Gambian economy, and it will get worse before it gets better. So it's government's responsibility to prepare the Gambian. It's government responsibility to create a soft landing so that once we hit, it's not going to be hard. If not, we will be doomed, and doomed we will, because social problem is the fastest way to bring political instability. And the foreign exchange crisis that I'm seeing today can bring a political crisis, because it has effects that reverberates, i.e. import will suffer. We can have shortage of commodities, or we can still have commodities but at an exorbitant price. And this will further increase the frustration of the Gambian. And that's why I think, in my humble view, the most important thing for President Barrow right now is to focus on the economic management of the country. We have lost focus as a nation. The government of the Gambia has lost focus of what's important and what is urgent for the Gambian. What's important and urgent right now is the livelihoods of Gambians. What's important and urgent is survival of the Gambian with dignity, of course. So, Mr. President, you need to do something, and also advocates and champions. The Ministry of Trade should be hammering the office of the President on a daily basis to help traders find a lasting solution to the festering foreign exchange problem. But unfortunately, if you have a Minister of Trade who is equally the Minister of Finance, not much is going to happen, for the simple reason that it is too much for one individual to handle. And not only that, these two ministries, they have divergence. They don't converge, they diverge. Why? Because one is the nerve center of the economy, that is Ministry of Finance. That's where economic management happens. The other one is the heartbeat of the Gambia, because that's where trade happens, and that's how we grow our economy. So these two places cannot, they can work in tandem, but they cannot have one person to manage it. And I think if the President is not aware, the minister should do the honorable thing and tell the President, I cannot be a caretaker for a delicate position. The Ministry of Trade cannot be on a caretaker basis. That is an injustice to the economy, because trade grows the economy. And today the economy is not growing because it's not being nurtured. It's not being nurtured because the Ministry of Trade is not doing what ought to be done. So, Minister of Finance, Honorable Minister, with all due respect, kuñ jox yépp du jël yépp. To whom much is given, much is expected. Why Olof ne buñ la joxee yépp bul jël yépp. I think you should relinquish that caretaker position back to the President and let him look for someone who will handle this issue. Yes, my good brother Cherno Omar Kebe said parallel exchange rates lead to chronic inflation pressures and dismal growth. I concur with you that the CDG needs to come up with better exchange rate policies than the most recent one. Well, you're quite right, my brother. Right now, we are at the mercy of what I call the black market. The black market are the people who stand at Westfield, people who stand around the hotels to buy and sell currency. Basically, they determine and dictate what the effective transaction rate for the dollar vis-a-vis the dollar C is going to be. So our central bank has no control on rates. And that is poor foreign policy management. That is poor exchange rate management. And this is why we are having the problems we're having. And also, the central bank has watched and stood by over the years to see that commercial banks have been elbowed out. What the central bank needs to do is to understand that it's commercial banks that close transactions internationally. It's through commercial banks that traders open letters of credit. Therefore, the Central Bank of the Gambia should and must empower banks to have access to affordable foreign currency. But today, basically the middleman, i.e. the parallel market, it's where the currency is going, and now the commercial banks are competing with the highest bidder to get currency to close transactions for people who import rice, people who import flour, people who import petroleum products. And guess what? They cannot find an efficient rate, so they're getting the best rate the parallel market is offering, and that's why prices are rising and rising and rising. But very soon, sorry for this word, shit's going to hit the ceiling. And when shit hits the ceiling, that's when we will see effects of poor management. And the effects of poor management will be social upheaval. See, when we talk about the economy, Gambians just see dollars and butut. And that's where we have a problem. The economy is a living organism. The economy is something that responds to stimulus or stimuli. The economy is basically an organism. It breathes, it lives, and it punishes us for bad decisions. And when we are punished for bad decisions, consequently, it's going to be social uprising. That's the end game of poor economic management, social uprising. And social uprising basically comes because of frustration, because of lack of hope, lack of visibility in the economy, and these are what's hurting the Gambian economy as of today. And I don't know who the president's advisor is. I don't know. But I think the president needs to be advised appropriately. And being advised appropriately is to start managing both a monetary and a fiscal policy on a prudent management basis. Prudent for the simple fact that the way things are today, it is very chaotic. The way things are today, it is very risky. The way things are today, it's not spelling prosperity. And that is a recipe for disaster. That's my worry. That's my concern. And to be forewarned is to be given a notice. Wahon nako, mogin hamon nako. But any sensible economist, be it 𝒂𝒐𝒊𝒏, be it Uncle Sidi Sane, be it Basil Tunde Jones, will tell you all is not well with the Gambian economy, and the Gambian economy as it is right now, it's on a collision course with a destiny that we don't want, we don't like, but the inevitability of where we're going is clearly spelled out because we have refused to take corrective measures and actions that will give us a U-turn out of the mess we're finding ourselves in right now. So my advice once again to the president is to find a permanent minister for the Minister of Trade as a first. My advice to the president is to strengthen our fiscal affairs of this country, i.e. budget execution. My advice to the president is to look at the government as a business, the business that should be profitable, but the profitability of our business is not dollars and butut, but social dividend. That being said, this government should be managed with a proper book of accounts that has real-time assets and real-time liabilities of the state. Not only our debt, our current asset stock, whether it's petroleum reserves that we have, whether it's cash at the bank that we have, is what this economy needs. That's what this economy deserves. If not, we will all be at a mess, and that's a mess that we don't want, because the simple fact is Gambia deserves better, and as it is right now, we're not getting the best out of our transactions, and all is not well and all cannot be well. So I do hope, and I mean it, that we do what's best for country, we do what's best for Gambia, and we try hard, because things are not good, things are not going well, and ultimately we are all going to suffer. It's a net loss for society, a net loss for Gambia, and I pray to God that we try and stop and change the direction of this country. But this direction can be changed with a sustained leadership that wants the country to have a different direction. And Mr. President should understand that leadership not only comes with sacrifices, but leadership comes with vision. So leadership comes with vision, leadership comes with mission, and the Gambia as a country, the Gambia as a government needs to have a vision board. And this vision board must be driven. How we're going to reach to the place. As it is right now, we're not getting a vision board. We're not getting, a proper vision board about where we want to go, how we're going to go there, and who is going to take us there. I am very concerned. And when I say I'm concerned because Gambia traditionally has been a merchant house. A merchant house is a country that relies heavily on international trade. International trade is what keeps the taxation going, because if you look at GRA, most of what they receive is duties from excise, what I call excise duties. And excise duties are a big component of what the GRA brings to the table by way of taxes that goes into our budget. And today, foreign exchange is a big component of this whole mix. And our foreign exchange situation is at a dire strait. And the reason why it's at a dire strait, I believe, and I strongly believe, that the central bank is not doing its job properly. It's not doing its job properly because the reason why I believe that the central bank is not doing its job properly, there has to be supervision and regulatory oversight. Regulatory oversight in the sense that you just don't give people license to operate without having a good regulatory mechanism for the environment. Today, wherever you go, you will see an MTO license. Bureau de change, all these bureau de change basically are MTOs. And these MTOs, they're poorly regulated in the sense that there is too much speculative activity, and this speculative activity is fueling the inflation in this country. So government literally is shooting itself in the foot, and when government shoots itself in the foot, it's the average Gambian who suffers. The average Gambian suffers in the sense that, price hikes will get to their food tables. Their rice, their oil, their bread will all suffer the inefficient transactions in the market. And that's where the government of the Gambia, by way of the central bank, must come and clean the inefficiency in the Forex market. The Forex market is very primitive. The Forex market is very inefficient. And the Forex market, as it is, happens to have a lot of arbitrage and speculation. And arbitrage and speculation are two things that will not help the market. These are two things that's going to deter the growth and prosperity of our nation. So monetary policy has different facets, but currency management is a big chunk, considering that we are an import country, meaning we import a lot. We are a country that relies heavily on remittances, so the people who manage these transactions are the ultimate winners, not the economy and not the Gambian population. So are we in business as a country to allow speculators to make money, or are we in business in this country to allow people to be in business but make money in the process of doing business, but not at the detriment of our economy and our citizens? But as it is right now, the MTOs have really gotten a grip of our foreign exchange market, and they're not doing it because it's getting long. But unfortunately, I think I'm going to make this into a series. We'll have the conversation. I'll call it the conversation, and we'll continue talking. But this is the second time 𝒂𝒃 went off, and I cannot keep up with 𝒂𝒃 going on and off, so I'm going to call it a quits. And thanks everyone for listening, watching, and good night. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.